The former home of Queen frontman Freddie Mercury is for sale in London. Built in 1907, the Kensington property features a bar, a library. Music. When Freddie Mercury passed away in 1991, the world mourned the loss of one of rock's most electrifying voices. But while millions grieved the Queen frontmen they had adored on stage, his closest circle of friends were faced with something far more intimate and startling. What he left behind inside his London home, Garden Lodge, tucked away behind tall brick walls in Kensington, the mansion wasn't just where Freddie lived. It was his sanctuary, his private world. And when the doors were finally opened after his death, the things discovered inside left even those who knew him best completely stunned. From Zanzibar to stardom, long before the world knew him as Freddie Mercury, he was born Far Bulsara on September 5, 1946 in Stonetown, Zanzibar, back when the island was still under British rule. His parents Bowie and Jair belonged to the Parsee community of Western India, tracing their roots to the city of Bulsar, now known as Valsad in Gujarat. They practiced Zoroastrianism, carrying their traditions with them even as life pulled them across continents. The Bulsaras had moved to Zanzibar for work. Bowie was a cashier at the British Colonial Office, but their family life was soon changed by the arrival of their son's quirks and gifts. Freddie was born with 4 extra incisors, a detail that might have been dismissed as odd by most, but to him it was the secret weapon behind that impossible vocal range. It was as if nature itself had reshaped his mouth for music. Though Zanzibar was home, most of Freddie's childhood unfolded in India. At 7, he was already learning piano while living with relatives. A year later, he was sent to St. Peter's, a British-style boarding school near Bombay. It was there he first started to bloom. By day, he collected stamps, an interest he inherited from his father and one of the few personal possessions of his that now sits in the Postal Museum in London. But by night, his world belonged to rock and roll. At 12, he pulled together a school band called the Hectics, blasting out covers of Elvis, Cliff Richard, and Little Richard with a boldness that set him apart. Friends from those days remember that he had an almost eerie ability to hear a song on the radio and then instantly replay it on the piano. It was also at St. Peter's that Farrokh Bulsara started calling himself Freddie. The name stuck, the music deepened, and by 1963 he was back in Zanzibar with his parents, but the island was a powder keg and the timing couldn't have been worse. In 1964, the Zanzibar Revolution erupted. A violent uprising against the Sultan's Arab-led government. Thousands of Arabs and Indians were slaughtered and the Bulsaras had no choice but to flee. Their escape landed them in England in the grey sprawl of Feldham Middlesex worlds away from the tropical coastlines of Freddie's childhood. They first stayed at Hamilton Close, shifted briefly to Hamilton Road, and finally settled into a modest house on Gladstone Avenue. England became the true turning point. Freddie studied art first at Isleworth Polytechnic and then at Ealing Art College, where he graduated with a diploma in graphic design in 1969. Those same design skills would later help him sketch the now iconic Queen crest. But in those early days, survival meant odd jobs and hustling. He worked as a baggage handler at Heathrow Airport, lugging suitcases while quietly carrying dreams far heavier than anything in those bags. He sold vintage scarves and second-hand Edwardian clothes alongside a new friend, drummer Roger Taylor. To Taylor, Freddie wasn't yet the singer the world would one day know. He was just my crazy mate, the guy who always knew where the fun was. Behind the flamboyance that was beginning to flicker, Freddie was also remembered by others as shy and quiet, someone who soaked up music more than conversation. But once he stepped on stage, the difference was night and day. In 1969, he fronted Ibex, later renamed Wreckage, a Liverpool-based band that leaned heavily into Hendrix-inspired blues. He even lived for a time above a pub on Penny Lane, soaking in Liverpool's music culture from the inside. When Wreckage fizzled out, he tried again with another group, Sour Milk Sea. But by early 1970, that too had dissolved. To anyone else, this might have looked like a string of failures. To Freddie, it was rehearsal. Every move, every band, and every moment of rejection was sharpening him for the stage where he would finally take his rightful place, the rise of a rock legend. By 1970, Freddie Mercury was no longer just a shy art student hustling scarves at Kensington Market. That spring, he joined forces with drummer Roger Taylor and guitarist Brian May, becoming the frontman of their band, Smile. A year later, bassist John Deacon completed the lineup, and the group that would soon conquer the world was born. But Freddie wasn't about to settle for an ordinary name. While others hesitated, he pushed for Queen. To him, the word was bold, commanding, and yes, deliberately provocative. He once explained that it sounded regal and splendid, strong and universal. And while he was perfectly aware of the camp connotations, that was only part of the allure. Around this time, he legally dropped Bulsara and officially became Mercury, an identity that fit his larger-than-life destiny. Even before the music exploded, he was shaping the band's identity. Just ahead of their debut album, Freddie designed the Queen crest, a fantastical coat of arms that fused the band's astrological signs. Lions for Deacon and Taylor, a crab for May, and 2 fairies for himself, the Virgo. A crown gleamed inside the giant Q. All of it rising under the wings of a fiery phoenix. It looked almost royal, a perfect symbol for a band that would rule stages like monarchs of rock. Freddie's natural speaking voice rested in the baritone range. But his singing pushed into soaring tenor territory, giving Queen a vocal edge few bands could match. And when it came to songwriting, he was restless, daring, and impossible to pin down. His fingerprints are all over Queen's greatest hits. Bohemian Rhapsody, We Are the Champions, Somebody to Love, Don't Stop Me Now, and more. Each one sounded like it came from a different world. Because Freddie hated repetition, he admitted that he thrived on change, pulling inspiration from whatever caught his eye in music, film, or theater. Some of his songs were labyrinths of shifting keys and wild structures like Bohemian Rhapsody or the ambitious tracks from Queen 2. Others, like Crazy Little Thing Called Love, were stripped down to just a handful of chords. What made it extraordinary was the balance. Freddie,